Princess Liara stood alone in the great hall of the Zithara Palace, her golden eyes scanning the gathered alien nobles. The room was full of color, with beings of every shape and size, their skins shimmering with patterns unique to their kind. Some had 6 arms, some had wings, some floated slightly above the ground. Yet, despite all this grandeur, Liara felt invisible. She had been promised to meet a suitor that morning, an important diplomat from a distant star system. But as the tall, blue-skinned alien approached, he barely looked at her. "You are lovely, I suppose," he said, his voice flat. "But I have no interest in bonding with you." With that, he turned and left, leaving Liara's heart sinking. This was not the first time. Over the past 5 cycles, countless aliens had come to the palace, each hoping to gain status or advantage by marrying her. Yet all of them left her untouched, uninterested, or in some cases, dismissive. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. "Even the princess cannot find a mate. Is she cursed?" some said. Others just laughed quietly behind their hands. Liara clenched her fists, trying to hide her frustration. She had always been proud, intelligent, skilled in diplomacy, trained in combat, and able to handle the responsibilities of the royal family. Yet none of that mattered in a society where appearances, status, and alien prestige were the only things that counted. Feeling the weight of the palace walls pressing in, Liara made a quiet decision. She would not allow herself to be trapped in sadness and rejection. She slipped away from the formal halls, moving through the winding corridors until she found the private gardens. The air here was cooler, filled with the scent of glowing plants and flowers that shifted color with the light. It was her sanctuary, the only place in the palace where she could breathe freely. As she walked along the stone paths, Liara noticed movement near the outer edge of the gardens. A lone figure in human military uniform was patrolling. Humans were rare on Zithara, sent by the Interstellar Alliance as peacekeepers. Unlike the aliens, humans did not flaunt their power or beauty. Their strength came from their actions, their courage, and their loyalty. Liara had seen humans before, but she had never spoken to one closely. The human soldier now turned and saw her. His dark eyes met hers, calm but attentive. "Princess Liara," he said politely, stopping at a respectful distance. "The gardens are not off limits, but it is unusual for royalty to walk alone." Liara raised an eyebrow. "And it is unusual for a human to patrol the gardens alone?" she asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and challenge. The soldier smiled faintly. "Unusual, perhaps, but necessary. There are threats even in the palace grounds." She studied him. His uniform was plain, his posture disciplined, but there was something in the way he carried himself. A quiet confidence, a sense of purpose. It was unlike any alien she had ever met. No one here seemed to act without arrogance or expectation. Yet this human moved with humility and strength. "I suppose you are one of the humans the court tolerates," Liara said, trying to hide her interest behind a small smirk. "I am Captain Adrian Hayes," he replied. "And I am here to keep peace. That includes protecting you, Princess." Liara laughed softly. The words were polite, but there was an undertone of sincerity. None of the alien suitors ever bothered to think of her safety beyond their own advantage. "Protect me?" she said. "I am fully capable of defending myself." "I do not doubt your abilities," Adrian said calmly. "But threats come in many forms. Sometimes it is not skill but timing that matters." Liara felt a spark of something unfamiliar. Respect. Here was someone who saw her not as a prize or a symbol, but as a person capable of action and thought. She wanted to test him, to see if humans truly matched the stories she had heard. Before she could ask more, a commotion broke out near the palace gates. Alien guards shouted warnings as a group of rogue aliens tried to breach the outer walls. Panic rippled through the gardens. Adrian's expression hardened. Without hesitation, he moved forward, signaling Liara to stay back. But she did not. Her instincts had been trained for years. She followed him, dodging behind trees and low walls as the rogue faction advanced. Adrian fought with skill and precision, blocking attacks and neutralizing threats with calculated movements. Liara observed, amazed at the human courage and efficiency. No alien in her court had ever faced danger with such calm. Her admiration grew, not just for his skill, but for the determination and loyalty that drove him. Once the intruders were driven back, the garden fell silent except for their heavy breaths. Liara approached Adrian cautiously, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. You fought well," she said softly, almost in awe. "I've never seen anyone handle danger like that." Adrian turned to her, his expression neutral but not cold. "It was my duty, Princess. Your safety is part of that duty." Liara's mind swirled. She had always been taught that humans were strange, limited, and inferior in certain ways. But here was a human who had shown her something different: bravery, intelligence, and honor. She felt a strange pull, a desire to understand more about this species. "Tell me," she asked quietly, "why do humans risk their lives for others? Even those who are not their family, not their people?" Adrian studied her for a moment, then answered with quiet conviction. "Because some things are worth more than self-interest. Courage, loyalty, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Every life matters, every choice matters." Liara felt a warmth in her chest she had not felt in years. In a world full of shallow glances and empty words, here was someone who lived by principles she could admire. She wanted to learn from him, to understand this courage that seemed so rare in her own world. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden. Liara knew she could not stay here forever. Yet for the first time in her life, she felt hope. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she could find someone who saw her for who she truly was, not just her title or beauty. As she turned to leave, she caught Adrian's gaze. There was understanding there, not just duty. It was the beginning of something neither of them fully comprehended yet, a bond that could change both their worlds. Liara walked back to the palace, her steps lighter than they had been in years. The rejections, the whispers, the loneliness, all of it felt distant now. For the first time, she thought, maybe being unwanted by aliens is not the end. Maybe it is just the beginning. The next morning, the palace of Zithara was alive with activity. Servants hurried along polished corridors, and nobles gathered in preparation for the day's ceremonies. Princess Liara sat in her chambers, staring out at the vast sky beyond the palace walls. Though the colors of dawn shimmered beautifully, her mind was elsewhere. She could not stop thinking about Captain Adrian Hayes, the human soldier who had faced danger without hesitation the day before. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alarm. The palace bells rang sharply, echoing across the courtyard. Liara's heart jumped. Intruders? It had been months since a threat had reached the outer walls, but the alarm left no room for doubt. Adrian was already in motion. He sprinted through the corridors, calling instructions to the human guards. "Block the main entrance. Check the perimeter. Protect the princess." His voice was firm but calm, a stark contrast to the chaos that was beginning to unfold. Liara did not hesitate. She grabbed a light ceremonial dagger from her room, a token of her training, and ran to the nearest corridor, moving quickly but silently. The palace was massive, with twisting hallways and high ceilings, but she knew it well. Still, she felt a surge of fear, not for herself, but for the people she cared about. In the courtyard, a group of rogue aliens had breached the outer gates. Their forms were twisted and menacing, covered in dark armor that glinted in the morning light. They moved swiftly, clearly trained in combat, but unprepared for the organized response of the palace guards and humans. Adrian met Liara's eyes for a brief moment. "Stay close," he said. "Follow my lead." Together they moved toward the courtyard. Adrian led the way, using precise movements to block attacks and redirect the intruders. He was calm, confident, and calculated, each action deliberate, each decision carefully timed. Liara followed, mirroring some of his movements, dodging attacks, and protecting anyone who was in immediate danger. Despite the danger, Liara could not help but be impressed. Humans, she realized, were not as physically strong as some of the aliens in the palace, but they had something different: courage, focus, and a willingness to face fear without hesitation. Adrian seemed to embody all of it. One of the rogue aliens lunged toward Liara, its claws extended. Without thinking, Adrian pushed her out of the way and deflected the attack with his staff. "Careful!" he shouted. "Your training helps, but don't take unnecessary risks." Liara nodded, her heart racing. She realized that this was a true test, not just of skill, but of character. She had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. She had relied on her status, her title, her appearance. Now, none of that mattered. Only courage, quick thinking, and teamwork could save them. The battle raged for several minutes. Liara saw the palace guards struggling against the intruders, some injured, some retreating. She felt a surge of determination. "We cannot fail," she whispered to herself. "Not today." Adrian noticed her resolve and gave a small nod, acknowledging her bravery. They moved together side by side, coordinating their actions. Where one could not reach, the other would intervene. Their teamwork was instinctive, almost as if they had trained together for years. Finally, the intruders realized they were outmatched. The combination of human strategy and palace defenses proved too strong. With one final push, Adrian led the counterattack, and the rogue aliens fled through the breached gates, leaving the courtyard in relative peace. The garden, where they had first met, became their temporary refuge. Liara leaned against a tree, her chest heaving from exertion, while Adrian checked the perimeter one last time before approaching her. "You were incredible," he said quietly, his dark eyes steady and serious. "You stayed calm, moved with purpose, and helped protect others. That is more than most people can do in a crisis." Liara felt her cheeks warm. Compliments from aliens rarely held weight, but praise from Adrian carried meaning. She studied him, noticing the small details, the way his uniform was slightly scuffed from battle, the firmness in his stance, the calm in his eyes despite the chaos they had faced. "Why do you humans do this?" she asked softly. "Why risk your life for someone you barely know?" Adrian paused. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said. "Courage is not about strength or size. It's about choice. I choose to protect. I choose to act when others hesitate. That is how humans survive, and how we honor life." Liara absorbed his words. She had grown up surrounded by aliens who valued appearance, status, and advantage. She had always believed that love and loyalty were secondary to power. But now, standing next to a human who had acted purely out of principle, she began to question everything she had been taught. "Your courage. It's different from anything I've seen," she admitted. "Even the bravest aliens rely on force or fear. You inspire trust, not fear." Adrian looked at her with a faint smile. "Inspiration comes from action, Princess, not words. You've seen what we humans do when we are committed. And you are capable of much more than you think." Liara's heart skipped a beat. His words were not flattery, not false praise. They carried truth. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a princess, not as a prize, but as a person with potential and strength. The sky turned a deeper shade of orange as the sun rose higher. Liara realized that the palace, with all its walls, ceremonies, and rigid customs, was no longer the only world she belonged to. There was a larger universe, full of beings who valued courage, loyalty, and character. And for the first time, she wanted to be part of it, not just as a princess, but as someone capable of making a difference. Adrian turned to leave, preparing to report the incident and coordinate the palace defenses. Liara stepped forward. "Wait," she said softly. I want to learn more about humans, about courage, about the choices you make." He glanced back at her, his expression unreadable for a moment, then nodded. "I can teach you," he said simply, "but only if you are willing to try, not as a princess, but as yourself." Liara smiled faintly, feeling a spark of excitement she had not felt in years. "Then I will try," she said. "Teach me, Captain Hayes." And so, as the palace settled after the chaos, a new bond began to form. Not one of status or expectation, but of respect, understanding, and the shared experience of facing danger together. For Liara, it was the first step toward discovering a world and a companion she had never imagined. Days passed after the attack on the palace, but Princess Liara could not stop thinking about Captain Adrian Hayes. His courage, calmness, and skill had impressed her deeply. More than that, he had treated her as a person, not a symbol of royalty or status. She wanted to understand humans better, to see why they were so different from the aliens she had known her entire life. One morning, she decided to take action. While the palace slept, Liara slipped out of her chambers and quietly made her way to the human training grounds. The soldiers were practicing coordinated drills, moving with precision, reacting to commands, and working as a seamless team. Liara observed from the shadows, her eyes wide with fascination. Adrian noticed her immediately, but did not show surprise. He simply nodded, signaling her to come forward. "I see curiosity in your eyes, Princess," he said gently. "Are you ready to learn?" Liara hesitated for a moment. "I am," she replied. "Teach me." The day began with simple exercises. Adrian instructed her on basic hand-to-hand movements, how to maintain balance, and how to use her instincts to anticipate danger. At first, Liara struggled. Her movements were elegant but not efficient. Her instincts had been trained for courtly rituals, not survival or combat. "Focus on your senses," Adrian advised. "Watch, listen, and feel. Humans rely on more than strength. We rely on awareness." Liara nodded, taking in his words. She closed her eyes, listening to the sounds around her. The rustle of leaves, the distant hum of the palace machines, even the soft breathing of the humans nearby. When she opened her eyes, she moved with more confidence, dodging and stepping in rhythm with Adrian's demonstrations. "You're improving quickly," Adrian said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But remember, strength is only part of the equation. Strategy and choice matter more." Liara reflected on this. She realized that many aliens focused solely on raw power or status, thinking these were the keys to success. Humans, however, combined intelligence, observation, and action in a way that made even the strongest opponent vulnerable. Over the next several days, Liara trained with Adrian every morning. She learned to anticipate attacks, move with purpose, and even handle light weaponry. She began to feel a sense of pride she had never experienced before, not because someone praised her, but because she knew she was capable. Adrian's guidance helped her discover a part of herself she had long ignored, courage and skill beyond what others had given her credit for. But it was not only physical lessons that mattered. Adrian spoke often of human philosophy, their approach to challenges, and their ideas about loyalty, honor, and responsibility. Liara listened intently, absorbing the differences between humans and aliens. Humans, he explained, valued personal growth and choice over appearances or social rank. Every action mattered, and every decision shaped their character. "You see," Adrian said one afternoon as they practiced near the palace gardens, "humans believe that being strong is not enough. You must be brave, yes, but also wise. You must consider the consequences of your actions and act for more than yourself." Liara pondered his words. She realized that her alien suitors had ignored these qualities entirely. They cared only for appearances, wealth, and power. In contrast, humans acted from principle. They risked their lives not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. One evening, after a long day of training, Liara and Adrian sat together beneath the glowing plants in the garden. The sky above Zithra shimmered with the colors of two suns setting, casting long shadows and bathing the world in orange and purple light. "You've changed since the attack," Adrian observed. "You move with more confidence, you think before you act, and you trust yourself more." Liara smiled faintly. "I feel stronger, not just in body but in mind. I see things differently now. I see value in courage, in loyalty, in principles that are bigger than oneself. I never understood it before." Adrian nodded. "It takes time to recognize what truly matters. Many spend their lives chasing what is easy or expected, but when you choose your path, it makes all the difference." Liara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. For the first time, she did not feel alone. She had someone who respected her as she was, who challenged her to be better, who showed her a world beyond the limitations of her society. "Humans are very different from what I imagined," she said softly. "I used to think we were superior in every way, but now I see there is something special about your people, something I admire." Adrian smiled quietly. "We are not perfect, Princess, but we strive to do our best. Courage, loyalty, and care for others, that is what defines us. And from what I see, you have the potential to embrace those qualities yourself." Liara felt a warmth in her chest. No alien had ever spoken to her this way, not just observing her status, but recognizing her potential and encouraging her to grow. She realized that the bond she was forming with Adrian was not about royalty or duty. It was about respect, trust, and the shared discovery of what courage truly meant. Days turned into weeks, and Liara continued her lessons. She learned to move swiftly and think quickly, to assess threats, and to act decisively. But more than that, she learned the value of patience, observation, and understanding. Every encounter with humans taught her something new, not just about their skills, but about their hearts. One day, as they practiced near the edge of the palace grounds, a small group of palace guards approached, looking uneasy. "Princess Liara," one of them said, "there are whispers in the court. Some aliens are mocking you for spending so much time with a human. They say it is improper for royalty to learn from someone outside our species." Liara looked at Adrian, who stood quietly, observing her reaction. She felt no shame, only clarity. "Let them talk," she said firmly. "I am learning courage, strength, and wisdom. If they cannot see the value in that, it is their loss, not mine." Adrian nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Good. True strength often comes with challenge. People will always doubt what they do not understand. The important thing is what you know about yourself." Liara's heart swelled with determination. She had discovered a new side of herself, a side that was brave, capable, and ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy could throw at her. And with Adrian's guidance, she realized that she was not limited by the prejudices of her own people. As the suns set once again over Zithra, Liara looked toward the horizon, feeling a sense of hope she had never known. She knew the journey ahead would be difficult. There would be judgment, resistance, and danger. But she also knew she was no longer alone, and that her bond with Adrian had given her the courage to face it all. For the first time in her life, Liara felt truly empowered. She was not just a rejected princess. She was a warrior, a student of courage, and a person discovering the limitless potential within herself. And the human soldier who had changed her view of the universe stood beside her, ready to teach, guide, and protect her every step of the way. The palace of Zithara was quiet that evening, except for the soft hum of the twin suns setting in the distance. Princess Liara walked through the halls alone, her thoughts heavy yet determined. In the past weeks, she had trained with Captain Adrian Hayes, learning courage, skill, and strategy. She had seen her own potential, and more importantly, she had seen the value in human strength and principles. But now, Liara faced a challenge far greater than combat or training. She had to face the expectations of her own heart. For years, she had followed the rules, hoping some alien suitor would finally choose her. They never had. And in the time she had spent with Adrian, she realized something startling. She did not care about aliens' approval anymore. What mattered to her was choice, her own choice. Liara found herself in the private garden where she had first met Adrian. The glowing plants reflected the colors of the sunset, and the air was calm. Adrian was there, adjusting his equipment after the day's drills. When he noticed her, he straightened and gave her a polite nod. "Princess Liara," he said, his voice calm. "You are here late." "I needed to think," she replied softly. She walked closer, her steps steady but cautious. "About everything. About who I am. And what I want." Adrian studied her quietly, sensing the change in her demeanor. She had grown confident, aware of her own strength and potential. There was a fire in her eyes that had not been there before. "Go on," he said encouragingly. "I am listening." Liara took a deep breath. "For years I have been rejected," she admitted. "By my people, by aliens who sought only status or power. I believed I would never matter, that I would always be alone." She paused, her gaze lowering. "Then I met you. You treat me as an equal. You value courage and heart, not title or beauty. And for the first time, I feel like I am seen, not as a princess, but as a person." Adrian's dark eyes softened. He stepped slightly closer, but he gave her the space to speak. "Liara," he said gently, "you have always had potential. You just needed someone to help you see it, and to trust yourself." Liara nodded, swallowing hard. Her heart beat faster. She knew what she wanted, but fear whispered in her mind. Could she truly defy tradition, defy her people, and follow her own path? Was it right for her to risk everything for a human, someone outside her world? She looked at Adrian, and something within her became clear. It did not matter what others thought. It did not matter what was expected. She wanted him, not as a guard, not as a teacher, but as someone she could choose freely. Slowly, she stepped closer, close enough for him to see the sincerity in her eyes. She lowered her voice until it was almost a whisper. "Be my mate." The words hung in the air, delicate yet powerful. Adrian's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but he did not move. He could see the courage behind her whisper, the truth of her choice. This was not a fleeting moment of emotion. It was a conscious decision, a declaration of trust and respect. "Liara," he began, his voice soft. "Are you certain?" "Yes," she said firmly, meeting his gaze. "I am certain. I choose you, not because it is easy, not because it is expected, but because you are who I want by my side. I see strength in you that no alien has ever shown me. I want that strength, and your heart, with mine." Adrian's expression shifted from surprise to admiration. He stepped closer, closing the small distance between them. "Then I accept," he said quietly. "Not as a duty, not as obligation, but as a choice. I choose to stand by you, Liara. Always." A breeze rustled the glowing plants around them, carrying the scent of the gardens and the calm of the evening. For a moment, the palace and its rules seemed far away, unimportant. There was only the choice they had made and the bond that had begun. Liara smiled, a mix of relief, joy, and newfound confidence filling her. She realized that this decision was more than personal. It was a statement. By choosing a human, she was defying centuries of tradition, showing her people that courage, respect, and loyalty mattered more than appearances or status. Adrian extended his hand, and Liara took it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, a simple gesture that carried profound meaning. It was the first step in a partnership built on equality, trust, and understanding, a foundation stronger than any title or ceremony could offer. The moment was interrupted by distant voices in the palace halls. Liara and Adrian knew they could not remain in the garden forever, yet neither moved away from each other. Their bond had been declared, and nothing could erase it. "You have changed, Liara," Adrian said quietly, as they began walking back toward the palace. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. You have learned to trust yourself, to make choices for who you are, not for what others expect of you." Liara nodded. "And you have shown me a world I never imagined, a world where courage and loyalty matter more than appearance or status. I will never forget that." As they returned to the palace halls, Liara felt a sense of clarity and purpose she had never known. The whispers of the court, the judgments of aliens, the expectations of royalty, they no longer held power over her. She had chosen, and that choice had given her strength. That night, Liara lay in her chambers thinking about the future. She knew there would be challenges ahead, some from aliens who could not understand her choice, some from her own doubts. But she felt ready. With Adrian by her side, she could face anything. Their bond was not just emotional. It was a partnership of respect, courage, and shared vision. As the twin moons rose over Zithera, casting silver light across the palace, Liara smiled. For the first time, she felt truly free. She had chosen her own path, defied tradition, and embraced her own heart. And she knew that together, she and Adrian could create a future neither of them had imagined, a future built on courage, trust, and the unbreakable strength of choice. The palace of Zithera was unusually quiet that morning, but not for long. Word of Princess Liara's choice had spread quickly through the court. Whispers followed her down every corridor. Some aliens were shocked, some outraged, and a few quietly curious. Humans were not common in the royal circle, and her decision to bond with one sent ripples through every level of Zitheran society. Liara stood in her chambers, her heart steady. She had made her choice, and now she would face the consequences. Beside her, Adrian Hayes packed his gear for another day of training and patrol. Though he was calm, he was alert, prepared for any challenge that might come their way. "They will not understand easily," Adrian said softly. "Some will resist, some will question, some may try to stop you. Are you ready?" Liara nodded. "I am. I have made my choice. No one can take that away from me. Not aliens, not traditions, not expectations." As they stepped into the palace halls together, the reactions were immediate. Guards whispered to one another, courtiers gawked, and distant nobles muttered under their breath. Liara walked tall, her gaze steady, while Adrian matched her pace silently, a figure of human discipline and calm beside her. The first confrontation came from the royal council. Elder Zoran, A towering figure with metallic blue skin and intricate facial markings approached her with a stern expression. "Princess Liara," he said, his voice echoing through the hall, "your choice is unprecedented. Bonding with a human is unheard of. You risk dishonor to the royal family." Liara met his gaze without flinching. "I risk nothing that matters," she replied calmly. "I have chosen someone who embodies courage, honor, and loyalty. Qualities that matter more than appearance, status, or custom. I choose Adrian Hayes because he sees me for who I truly am, and because I see the same strength in him." A murmur spread across the council. Some were scandalized, some intrigued, and some quietly admiring her courage. Elder Zoran's expression softened slightly, though his tone remained cautious. "Your choice is bold, Princess," he said, "but boldness is not always wise. Are you prepared for the consequences?" "I am," Liara answered. "And I am not alone." She gestured toward Adrian. "He stands with me as an equal, as a partner, and as my chosen mate." The council fell silent. For the first time, tradition had been challenged not by force, but by principle and choice. Liara's words, backed by human courage and unwavering confidence, shifted the room's energy. Slowly, one by one, members of the council nodded in acknowledgement. Even Elder Zoran's eyes held a trace of respect. The news of Liara's choice spread beyond the palace walls. Alien nobles debated it in public forums. Some humans stationed on Zithera were quietly proud, admiring the courage of a princess who had chosen loyalty and heart over custom and appearances. Even ordinary citizens began to see that the royal family could embrace change, that the values of bravery, integrity, and personal choice were worth respecting. Despite the political tension, life at the palace continued. Liara trained daily with Adrian, refining her skills, learning strategy, and strengthening her mind and body. Each day, her confidence grew, and her respect for human courage deepened. Adrian, in turn, admired Liara's intelligence, determination, and bravery. Together, they became a team admired by many, feared by a few, and respected universally. One afternoon, a new threat emerged. A group of mercenaries from a distant star system had heard rumors of instability in the palace and attempted to breach the city gates. The palace guards prepared for battle, but Liara and Adrian knew that strategy, not brute force, would be the key to victory. Adrian coordinated the human and alien forces, demonstrating the power of teamwork and quick thinking. Liara, now skilled in tactics and aware of her own strength, directed palace defenses, using knowledge she had learned from him. Their combined efforts created a strategy that was both clever and effective, surprising even the most experienced alien generals. The mercenaries were defeated without loss to the palace forces. The victory was not just a triumph of strength, but a testament to the value of unity, courage, and intelligence. Liara had proven that humans were not just capable allies, but partners in leadership and strategy. After the battle, Liara stood with Adrian on the palace terrace, looking out at the city below. Citizens cheered as news of their victory spread. Liara realized that their bond had changed more than just their personal lives. It had shifted perceptions, inspired respect, and created a new understanding between humans and aliens. "You've done something remarkable," Adrian said quietly. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone here. You've shown that courage and choice matter more than custom or expectation." Liara smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "And you've shown me what it truly means to be strong, not just in body, but in heart and mind. Together we've proven that humans are more than outsiders. We are equals." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the palace, Liara felt the weight of her past loneliness lift. She was no longer the rejected princess. She was a leader, a warrior, and a pioneer for a new era of understanding and respect. And she was not alone. Adrian placed a hand gently on hers. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together, as partners, as equals, and as mates by choice." Liara nodded. "Yes, together." The palace, once rigid with tradition and expectation, now felt alive with possibility. Aliens and humans worked side by side, respecting each other's strengths, learning from one another, and forging bonds that would shape the future. Liara looked out at the stars above Zithera, her heart filled with hope and determination. She knew the road ahead would not always be easy. Challenges would come, skeptics would question, and dangers would arise. But she also knew that with courage, loyalty, and the right partner at her side, there was nothing she could not face. That night, as the palace settled under the twin moons, Liara reflected on her journey. She had gone from a lonely, rejected princess to a confident leader who had chosen her own path. She had discovered her strength, embraced human courage, and found a companion who matched her in heart and spirit. For the first time, the future felt limitless, and in that future, humans were no longer outsiders. They were allies, partners, and an integral part of a galaxy ready to change. Liara and Adrian stood side by side, looking out at the horizon, knowing that together they had not only shaped their own destinies, but had begun a new era, a time where courage, honor, and choice were recognized above all else. And in that era, Princess Liara was no longer alone. She had found not only a mate, but a partner who inspired her to be her best, who stood by her through danger, and who showed her the true power of heart and courage. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy had to offer, and nothing could stand in their way.